So we have to do both profits and purpose. We have to do both deliver for the shareholders and deliver for our clients. But the fun part is to see the clients and just read the stories and hear the stories and watch the teammates' excitement in helping them.
I will now open the floor to audience questions. If you do have a question, just raise your hand and the usher will come to you. Just take it over here on the front.
Thank you. Testing. So do you think that the rise of private credit is threatening the effectiveness of regulations passed post the financial crisis in 2008?
Yeah, so I think going back to a little bit the point about over pushing the regulation too far has resulted in, I'm going to stay in the U.S. context here because I know the facts better than I would. It has resulted in the U.S., which has this deep capital markets and the private capital business, the private equity business and stuff, and allows for non-bank lenders to form, which is harder in other societies. Half of all the asset classes, whether it's credit cards, consumer credit, commercial credit, is not in the banking system. And so the question is, why did it go someplace? And it went someplace because of probably the regulations around doing it. And in the case of credit, that's typically the ability to get more leverage or terms you could otherwise not get. And so private capital has been a competitor of the banking industry, but it's been around for a long time. This is not new. It's taken a different ilk. And so the question then is how those enterprises will go through a credit cycle. Because when we hit a credit cycle and we have a 30-year customer and they're getting bumped around at night because the economy went south, we spend the time to work it through with them. We're not sure, but we take 1,000 people out of one side of the company and put them into work with these clients. It's not an easy thing to do. That's more people a lot of these firms will have in their lifetime. And so the question is, will they have the ability to work with clients, or will they just punch them out, and how that will affect society, how much leverage they put in the system, and then how much leverage they're getting on leverage and structures. Those are the debates. And I think we'll see, but it's clear that if you turn the dials too tight on the banking system, what happens is that arbitrage goes and the pools of capital are so deep that you can find the capital, because it's not those institutions that come up with the money themselves. They're getting investors to put it in to get the yields. And they're not massive returns because they're sort of yields of credit. So it's only so much. So they're getting enhanced returns by leverage, or people are just taking it as alternative to fixed income, and so we'll see it play out. But the story is yet to be written on the outcome of that phenomenon at this point, much like it was about the mortgage phenomenon or the credit card phenomenon, and some of these things didn't end so well. So we'll see how this works through.
Yeah, this member there.
Thank you for, I guess this isn't working. Thank you for speaking to us. My question is, what's been the biggest or one of the biggest challenges of your career, and how did you go about handling it and overcome it?
The biggest challenge was the financial crisis, and so, but it wasn't unique in that we had a recession in the late 80s that I was still a lawyer, but I had to work with a company to get a predecessor part of our company to get its position so it could survive from a liquidity standpoint. And then you had the dot-com crisis or this crisis. So you've had multiple crises, but the financial crisis was different because the reaction of societies around the world, including this country and Europe and the U.S., was really kind of and deservingly so, a bit of a punchback, and a lot of regulation, a lot of turmoil, and a lot of activating people against the banking system. And so when you have the biggest consumer brand, and when you have 1 in 5 delinquent mortgages in the United States that you're responsible for collecting for investors, including the federal government, it's an interesting position to be. And so we went through the financial crisis. We had to deal with the fact that we had a transaction with Merrill that wasn't turning out to be what we want. We told the government we didn't want to do the deal. That was I wasn't CEO then, I was doing another job then, and we had a food fight with the government about we didn't want to do the deal. It's all been written about, and and they said you have to do the deal, and we said we don't want to do it. So that was kind of interesting, and so those were tense moments. But the real hardest times were getting our team to realize that we had to take what was a wonderful set of businesses and capabilities and client base and stuff and move it away from the fact that we had some really hard work to do to restructure the balance sheet, collect all these loans, do it on a fair basis. So we went from, let's say, 10,000 people working in that business to 50,000 people in like 36 months, running fairs all over the country to help people understand how to modify their mortgages, staffing up in all our facilities to handle the inbound calls from that. And we end up modifying, literally millions of mortgages and stuff like that. And that was tough because every day people were, going after your motives and stuff, not realizing there was a lot more complex question of what happened, but it wasn't the time to talk about it. And you had to get people motivated to come to work when they were reading the paper that, they were the cause of the end of the earth, the end of the world. And that's a tricky execution. So that was hard. But the team did a great job, and here we are,
Yeah, remember there? If you can speak loudly, that would be great.
And if you could change one thing about it, what would it be?
I couldn't.
Sorry, if you could please repeat that, and also please speak loud.
What is your favorite part of banking and why? And if you could change one thing about it, what would it be?
The favorite part of banking
And why? And
what we
And if you could change it or change something about it, what would it be?
Look, so I say this and people don't believe it, but it's true, is my email, if you Google my name and said, what's Brian Moynihan, that is actually my email. I read every one of them. And so there's 60, 70 million consumers that can reach me at any given moment. Not a lot do because we have a fantastic team. But when you read the story of what we do for somebody in the California fire situation and and we don't always get it right, so I get the ones that say you didn't get it right too. It is unbelievable how our basic position as a company is in our sort of convening line, which is what would you like the power to do? We ask that among our customers and clients, our team, our shareholders in society, and listen for the answer and then take action. And if you watch what our team can do to help a consumer get their affairs in order, to help a person deal with the fact their parents now at a point where they need the medical powers of attorney and financial powers of attorney to help take care of their parents or to send a school to college or buy their first house. And then you move into business, to start a business and grow that business and to sell the business or buy a company. That to enable people to realize their hopes and dreams and their opportunities it's just that's the fun part. We serve. We're a service industry. That's what we do. We serve customers and clients, and to watch clients respond to not only what we do, but how we do it and the way we do it is a fantastic thing. The thing I'd change, there's lots of things I'd change, but none of them are momentous. None of them are something like, oh my God, that would be, should we get the regulation balanced? Yes, so this, that. But I think we need to keep building. We are it's not changing banking, but our companies had to change. Our brand is, a big capability, a big brand, and how we handle that brand and how we drive that brand is something we need to change. We need to keep improving upon. And so when you're reaching so many people, you're subject to the one-off activity and stuff. And so you'd like to change that people would understand you have 7 million customers a bump in a night, but that's not the reality, so we have to adapt around it. So helping people is a fantastic thing. So we make a lot of money, there's not a question, but we do it and help people, that's how we do it. We just have a lot of people we help, and that adds up to a lot of money. So we have to do both profits and purpose. We have to do both deliver for the shareholders and deliver for our clients. But the fun part is to see the clients and just read the stories and hear the stories and watch the teammates' excitement in helping them.
We'll take one final question. Yes, over here.
Thank you very much indeed for coming to see us today. In order to defend against systemic shocks, you need hedging assets.
Yep.
And in the medieval treaties on trade, they considered that the most important store of value was reputation. So what would you consider for the 21st century is going to be the most important hedging asset?
The reputation is still the most important issue. Remember, every day we'll have 3 billion quotes we give out in the trading business.
But would you say something like, do you think that the cryptocurrencies, do you think that's...
Yeah, so the trust is what the banking system relies on. And so you have to, it's a little bit the same question that the other gentleman asked, which is, you have to be in a position that you can deliver on that trust that people put in. You're holding their money, you're handling their financial lives. There's nothing more intimate to customers. So now, when we talk about hedging, that has a real meaning now of very physical questions, which is we have this huge balance sheet in the trading business, and it's all basically neutral. So $900 billion, and the value at risk on that a given day is $40 million or something like that. So there's all this offsetting. And so the reputation piece has been codified into actual real activity. So there's real contracts now. So you don't have to trust the person as much as you did. You have a contract and you collateralize that contract and you adjust that collateral every day. So what's odd is in the old days, the ship went out and carried your goods and it was delivered on payment on the other side, and you had to trust the person taking wasn't going to steal them from you, and you had to trust the person was going to deliver them against payment and get them back. The reality now is that's happening instantaneously, but we actually have real contracts governing it that then require people to behave. And one of the roles we actually play in society is to intervene in that trust gap, which is what happens now in trade is we finance the ability to send the products by taking the lien on the collateral, for lack of a better term, in transit, and then we get paid on the other side. So we help facilitate commerce because the trust of just, I'm going to send it to you, it doesn't work. So, but hedging, one of the good things that's come out of all of this, going back to the first question about risk and stuff, is the understanding of hedging and collateralization of hedging and putting hedges, things on exchanges so they settle every day, and there's not as much not as much value driven by models and things on the back. That's been a good thing in the industry. So the volatility in the outcome, we trade 220 days a year or whatever it is, and we'll lose money a day, 5 days, and just think of the velocity, and that's all because we're hedging that capability, but we're also examining that capability. And but in your more philosophical question, trust is the asset in the banking system. And when I talk about our people, why we have to strive to be perfect, and if I challenge every one of you to be perfect, never get a question wrong, never get an essay the professor doesn't like, and I said, that is the standard. You'd say that's an unreasonable standard, but we strive to be perfect because there's an American football coach named Vince Lombardi has a famous quote, on the road to perfection, you'll find excellence. And when people say, well, that's a pretty tough standard, what I say is, the people are trusting us with their money. Would you give other than your family, the human beings, this is the most important, would you give that to somebody who doesn't want to try to be perfect in their execution? So that's probably a little bit of a modern day explanation, but it is about trust.
I'm afraid that's all the time we had for questions. Just ask one final thing we ask all of our guests. If there's one piece of advice you could give the members of the Oxford Union and to the students over here, what would that be?
So this is sort of preaching to the choir. You got to keep learning. So some of you have done something else and come back to the educational system. But the day you walk outside these wonderful hallowed doors of an institution, like I went to a modern college because it started in 1764, so you guys are going to colleges. The day you walk out, your ability to learn goes down. The curation of your life goes up. And what do I mean by that? The stuff you have to read for work, the stuff you have to read of what you're researching and continuing to enact is all brought to you. And then you naturally then gravitate to the stuff that you want to read, as opposed to some professor made me read the stuff that I would have never read except for they made me do it. And so what's the antidote to that problem? Curiosity. And there's a book written by a fellow named Brian Grazer, and some of you may know who that is or don't know, but he is the great movie producer that works with on all the great movies you've seen with Ron Howard. He's the partner around now. He wrote a book called A Curious Mind. I advise you to read it. It's 250, 275 pages, but talks about his life of being curious and how it's made him successful. And he was, and I always recommend that, but if you don't stay curious, you get less smart every day and more narrow every day. And it's hard outside the challenge you go in a place like this. You're getting a fire hose of knowledge thrown at you every day with the brightest people in the world to talk to each other, the brightest people in the world to engage with, the professors. When you leave this gate, wherever you walk through when this all ends, that changes dramatically. And the only antidote is to keep reading and read the stuff that you shouldn't read, and read the stuff you disagree with, and read the stuff that nobody's making you read. Because that's where you're going to find interest and fun and stuff like that. But if you stay curious, that's it. Because you'll be a lifelong learner and you'll be successful. In our company, we hire 2,000 plus kids from school every year. They put me in front of them. They ask the same question, and I give them that answer every year, which is just keep reading and learning. And if you don't, you're just going to start to mitigate your capabilities. And if you do, the sky's the limit.
Brian, thank you so much for joining, and please join me in the round of applause.